I get to invite the remaining panelists for our second panel up. Let's give it up for Eldon Tim, John Scholes, and Robin Sigo. Thank you. Thank you. So the great thing about this second panel is we really get to hear more about the community side. And the first panel actually spoke to the importance of bringing community voice in. First question here, Elisheba, I want to come right to you because there is something that's very specific about the role of arts and culture in the waterfront. I want to hear your perspective on this. Tell us more and why it's so important.
I mean, you look at all these photos, right? Like, people are coming to the waterfront to experience dance, music, their cultural activities. It is the thing that brings life to a space, which is why people tap into artists to do their redevelopment and reimagining of things. I think we sometimes think as artists as the first wave of gentrification, but they're actually the really incredible thinkers of our time, and they're really thinking outside of our box. And the thing that community really spoke about across those 10, 11 focus groups was really making sure that they could see themselves in the park and celebrate their community in the park.
Thank you for that. Eldon, when we think about the vision for creating a sense of belonging, you know, we're talking about the involvement of culture. Tell us your perspective on why that's so important for the vision of the Waterfront Park.
Well, as the first panel talked about, right, this is really about a waterfront for everybody, right? And to really feel that we need to express we need every single community to feel a sense of belonging, engagement, and ownership of the space. And that means really authentically partnering with the different communities and letting them come down and really express whatever it means for them. So, you know, we often talk about, everyone's invited to our events, but we really want community to create events for themselves, right? This is not a place where we show off events just for the general public, but to really be authentic and really be local means that communities are creating events for themselves, and then they invite us in to participate in those as well. And I think that really expresses the values that have been part of this project all along. That's authentic belonging, that's authentically being ownership, and that's authentically being part of the greater ecosystem.
Yeah, Robin, this brings me to you because we were talking earlier about indigeneity, right? There's so much history here that is important, not only for the locals who are coming back to Waterfront Park, but for so many who seek out the waterfront as a destination on their vacation when they're here in the Pacific Northwest. Tell us about how you kind of see the importance of the stories of the indigenous folks whose land we are on being embedded in the design of the Waterfront Park.
Yeah, thank you for that, because it's one of my favorite parts about this project, and I have a lot of favorite parts of it. So to pick one, it's definitely going to be that I get to walk up and down here and tell my ancestors' story and future generations. Like, all of those pieces are there. There are so many indigenous artists that have been a part of this process. There's so many people from different tribes, and also the urban Indian population that's here and has made Seattle their home, and that they feel connected here. And the place where, like, as I talked about during the welcoming, like, this is our chance to tell stories, right? There's only so many things. I'm somebody who likes to read signs. My understanding is lots of people don't read signs, but if you grew up as a curator's daughter, then you get to read all of those signs. And so getting to read those signs is one thing. Getting to tell that story after you've done it is a whole other piece. And I'm excited to see that place of, I'm excited to see that place of being able to tell those stories together. I don't know if people, one of the things that we talked about at several different committees I was on for the waterfront was they're still around here. There's little dance steps embedded in the ground, and that as a kid, when you walk with your parents and things like that, you're really close to the ground. So often you don't see the beautiful things that are, see what's on the ground. So doing those types of things, and we talked about looking at it from kids' perspectives, and they invited me to bring my kids to meetings so that they could actually talk about what their identity was as well. What would they see in those places? And I think that that's so important, right? That it's not just all these different populations, but it's everybody coming together, and that collective feel of collective joy and awe when you get to see something and you're like, oh, and then all of a sudden, right, we're not strangers anymore because we've experienced this moment of awe together.
Yeah, it's true in terms of a sense of connection, which aids in belonging. And John, I want to talk a bit about what this design means to the Seattle Downtown Association. Y'all just hosted an amazing conference like last week, right? Where people from all over the country were here that are part of downtown associations everywhere. And it hadn't happened since like the 90s, early 90s. So it's a big deal because we see that when we have engagements, it also is going to impact the viability of downtown and really reinvigorating that. We saw a dip since COVID. So tell us a bit about how you're seeing this amazing design and construction also feeding into some of the goals you all have at the Downtown Association.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, we had more than 1,400 folks from around North America, around the world here last week, Tuesday to Friday. And a big thanks to Joy, to staff at SDOT, to Bob Donegan, many others who helped host a lot of those folks on the waterfront. And I can tell you to a person, they were just blown away by what they saw down here. And Bob shared the story of the last 25 plus years. He had 180 slides and 4,000 data points that he made it through in 12 minutes. I couldn't believe it that he did it, but he did. And they were just blown away. And so it's great to see your city through the eyes of others that are enjoying it, that are loving it, that are positive about it. And I think what this waterfront will do when it's finally said and done and open, certainly impress lots of people that are coming from other parts of the country and parts of the world. That's great. But I think, too, it's going to be a big invitation for locals to come back to downtown if they haven't been since COVID or if they haven't been as frequently. And we know that folks that live within 10 miles of downtown are coming about half as often as they were pre-COVID. And their rates of visitation to other entertainment and shopping centers around the region have returned to just about where they were pre-COVID. So we've got work to do in inviting locals back. This is going to be an incredible invitation. And I think, we thought about this project for, 20 or so years as opening up and debuting a park. And I think it's much more than that, and we need to sort of maybe reframe how we think of it. It's a whole new set of experiences that you couldn't have before, or you couldn't have them in the same way. And it's a whole new part of the city. And you think of what's been down here for decades, the best farmers market in the country, one of the best sculpture parks in the country, one of the most incredible collections of historic properties in the country, an existing aquarium. Those were all here, right? But they had a double-decker highway that was loud and noisy and going right through it all. And now you're going to have a whole new set of experiences on top of those, which has this wonderful backdrop of nature where you can see a national park. I mean, there's not a lot of downtowns where you can see a national park from the shoreline. So I think this is, to me, it's about a whole new set of experiences that you couldn't have in the same way before, or they're going to be brand new experiences that you didn't have at all. And it's going to be phenomenal for locals. And for downtowns to be successful, locals got to love them, and guess what? Everybody else will then.
Yeah, absolutely. So much of this is, how do I see myself there? And I know that we talked a little bit about it on the first panel, getting this to hit Chinatown ID, to hit the Central District. I want to come to you, Elisheba, because when I think about, there being active engagements here that drive traffic to a space like Wari, which you are director of, you operate. Tell us a bit about what that means to cultural spaces that are now hubs in our historic neighborhoods like the Central District.
That's a good question. It's the question people always want me to ask. One, I think I should start by saying, I had a relationship with the waterfront as a born and raised Black woman from birth, right? It wasn't really hard to park down there back in the day. Me and my friends would just go there randomly. You didn't have to make a plan. It wasn't probably till the mid 2000s, right, when things started, like businesses started going away, like the Highway 99 Blues Club and things like that I used to go to all the time to see my friends perform. So I do think there's a way that it's kind of returning back to the community, because I feel like the waterfront used to be ours. And not just for tourists, right? But for a space like Wari, we're very much about being in Black community and being there for Black folks. And so we want people to be able to go to the waterfront, but also come to our space to see excellent Black art. It's really important for us to be in the Central District. A lot of our work is around anti-displacement, but making sure that people understand that they could come from the waterfront and learn more about the other communities is really important to us. So I think there's a huge opportunity, but I think the waterfront itself is also a space that Black people have always felt welcome, and amplifying that will actually make those pathways much more clear.
Yeah, amplification is key. It also takes operationalizing. So I want to come to you, Eldon, because when we think about operationalizing some of that, what does that look like on Friends of Waterfront side?
Yeah, I mean, the first level of operations is obviously we're focused on making a clean, safe, welcoming park, right? All the other, as I always tell the team, if we are really leaning into programming, we're leaning into activation, but if we don't have a clean, safe park, no one's going to come down there. So I do want to say that in partnership, we've been really focusing on that, and I think we've been really successful at inviting folks who might not have been down to the waterfront to come down and give it a shot and give it a try, because I do think it is a really welcoming spot. In terms of reconnecting to communities, I think one, like I said, my first answer, is letting communities come down and really express themselves and really share, you know what, this is our culture, this is who we are. Come on to our neighborhoods, experience that, come to where we are and expand that. And so, right, part of it is, for some people, it's exposure to a community or a culture or, right, an activity they haven't had that exposure to. And then also it's bringing those communities down to the waterfront and just, right, meeting your neighbors. There's a lot, particularly in the past 4 years, where we've had that disconnect where we aren't meeting our neighbors, right? Be it COVID, be it the online revolution we're currently experiencing. So I do, part of it is just bringing all these different peoples, all these different communities down, making sure they feel welcome, making sure they come back down again and again, so you meet new neighbors, you build new relationships, you see each other, because I think that's really how we are going to build a better Seattle and a better region.
Yeah. And, you know, safety is key. John, I'm going to come to you, because when we think about the safety of downtown, you know, there's been now, I think the proliferation of social media means that people can make these accounts and then they're just showcasing cities all over the world in terms of the ways that they're unsafe. What does that mean for the Seattle Downtown Association to be kind of partnering here with Friends and with the Waterfront Park on that safety side, on that safety issue?
Yeah, cities, downtowns, urban parks have never worked well if folks don't feel first that they're safe and welcoming and clean and delightful. And so that's got to be job number one. I think we are making great progress in the phases that have already opened, and the partnership that's been developed between Friends and the city and Seattle Center, I think, is a great one. And we've had lessons learned over these last 10 years in partnering with the City of Seattle and the Parks Department in the management activation of Westlake Park and Occidental Square. And now Bell Street Park and Pioneer Park and Pioneer Square. So we've made a lot of headway in really borrowing and implementing, but in some ways making it our own, a model that has proved successful across the country as the gold standard of managing and delivering great spaces where everybody feels welcome. And we've got to get that right. And I think we can. And when we do, people will come.
Yeah. I have a follow-up to that, because I think affordability is also key too. We see vacancies and things like that, and I think there's been so many amazing programs that have been activating buildings, activating spaces, opening it up for some, you know, innovation and new ways of, you know, fulfilling the space. I think about so many spaces that I've been able to be a part of and be there to experience what they're offering. But I just want you to talk a bit about how important that is, because that's a part of that sense of belonging and that welcoming, right, John?
Yeah, no doubt. We've been through a number of years with facing a lot of difficult challenges and a lot of disruption. But the strength of downtowns are their resiliency, their ability to adapt. The term doom loop has been thrown around and suggested over the last couple of years that the downtowns get sort of stuck in these cycles. I think the Seattle's in a bloom loop, and we're seeing that with openings and more businesses that are opening than closing. You look at what PCC announced last Friday, a pivot and going back into the space that they exited not too long ago with a different format and bringing their office space in there too. And there's lots of examples around the downtown of artists and small business. The Seattle Restored program's been phenomenal. I know some of that has been tested and incubated on the waterfront as well in some of the pop-ups that Friends has done. So I think Seattle's in a bloom loop, and where we've had challenges, new opportunity emerges, and that's always been the story of downtowns. This is an incredibly resilient city, and the downtown model, the urban model, the city model has lasted quite some time and proven itself for hundreds and hundreds of years, and is pretty resilient.
Yeah, thank you for that. Robin, when we think about, legacy, we're talking here about, hundreds of years of activation. I think about, how important it is in terms of belonging, welcoming. You talked about some of the ways that we can make sure, folks understand the history and the legacy. When you think about those future generations and continuing that for so many who have called this land home for thousands of years, tell us a bit about what you kind of see for the future and making sure that young folks who are Indigenous are also a part of all of the work that's happening here at the waterfront.
I think that that's one of the key points of this, right? Is like that ability to make it welcoming, because Seattle has not always been welcoming. And even like having the viaduct there, right? Or having that there and having it be so loud and so intense, and then also having that space of like just nothingness. Like I used to come over for shows when I was a teenager, and my parents would always worry about me walking through Seattle, and I'm like, no, I'll be okay. Even if I didn't necessarily always feel okay, I was gonna be confident to walk through this. And so I think the process of like my kids coming over here and doing things with STG and their songwriting program and learning about being able to take local culture. I mean, the ferry now doesn't charge if you're 19 and under, and that's fantastic. That makes it more accessible to be here. It makes this space walkable. When we're talking, it was so exciting to drive through today and actually see the jellyfish playground that's going in right there. And we were talking about how adults want to play on that as well. Like, those are the things, right? We're looking for those moments of joy, those moments of whimsy, where we get to carry on for our next generation, because the reason we're still here is resilience, and resilience gets built in those moments of joy. So, I think that's what we're doing. Like, I can't wait to sit and watch the sunset on the Overlook Park, looking around at, Owen Oliver, who worked on figuring out which designs were gonna go in, would be sandblasted in, and Valerie Seagrass, who's, these are Indigenous people who made sure that my kids and future generations of Indigenous people will feel comfortable here. And the byproduct of that is that we all feel comfortable here.
Yeah, 100%. Another call out, if y'all do have audience questions, I want to make sure y'all have your cards, you're getting them to folks, because I'm going to ask one last question, then we'll open it up for audience questions here. Eldon, I think this is an important question, because nationally there's movements happening for cities to reclaim old infrastructure and build new city parks, like the Beltline in Atlanta or the Underline in Miami. We kind of talked about that a little bit on the first panel, but what are some of the learnings and best practices that we're embedding here? And then also, what are some of the things you see us doing differently for Waterfront Park?
Yeah, so we have this amazing opportunity to be part of the High Line network. So most people know about the High Line in New York, which is one of the more recent and major infrastructure reuse projects. So the High Line network was really developed because they saw a lot of things they wished they had done at the end of that project. And they took a bold step and said, hey, we want to share that with all these other projects so that they can embed that. So right, it is really focused on equity and the impacts that our projects have, because our projects can, particularly if we don't pay attention, have a gentrifying effect, and right, a lot of those things. So that network is really be intentional about sharing these learnings about how can we ensure that the economic benefits, the cultural benefits really do go back into the local community and really support those communities. So some of the things that we've learned from that is particularly how we engage with community, right? That really looking in how we support communities first, and particularly creating our community committees. So we have several community committees that help inform our work on every single level. So how do we assemble those? How do we bring those? And how do we really authentically facilitate those and making sure we follow through on those items? All the way to the very practical, like the Atlanta Beltline has been a real innovator in terms of activating parks with small businesses and creating those small business opportunities. How can we, since they've gone ahead of us in terms of the timeline, how can we really learn from them in terms of, right, they tried all sorts of different pilots. They learned what did and did not work within at least the Atlanta context. So how do we take those learnings and apply them to us and create, right? One of them is like, what's the right role in terms of incubating businesses, and where do we fit in an ecosystem, right? Friends is not here to be the only person. We are in a very, very complex ecosystem with hundreds of partners. So where is our role within that ecosystem in terms of making sure those economic opportunities go to small businesses, particularly developing businesses in communities where we do know those economic investments need to happen. So how do we reconnect to the Central District? How do we reconnect to the CID? How do we make sure members of the community see those economic benefits and those businesses can come down here and develop and really become part of a greater regional ecosystem?
Yeah. Before I get to these audience questions, I have one last question for Elisheba and Robin, and I want to talk a bit about how important it is. I mean, in communities, we often talk about people can smell performativism a mile away. And you have to be real serious about building relationship. And I want to talk to both of you about the connection that you've had to this entire project in terms of that intentionality Friends has taken to make sure that they are being relational, that they're moving in a relational way to really impact some change and inform design. I'll start with you, Elisheba.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was super exciting to see, like, I think it was 2023, so many community festivals being on the waterfront, and how that, like, gave them validity, right? Like, a lot of these festivals that are small BIPOC festivals were like, I can't believe I've been invited to do this on the waterfront, right? And then it also amplified their message. So it was super exciting, and I hope that more of that can happen so that, like I said, that downtown space, the waterfront space feels like everybody's space. I also just think that the staff, like, shout out to all of you guys. I can't say everybody's name off the top of my head, but they really do care. Like, being in meetings with this entire staff, that is like their biggest, they're taking it really personally if people don't feel safe or welcome here, and they're also of the community as well. And so I just want to shout that out because everything they've been doing, I've noticed, has been really intentional. Even having Afro Punk here with KXP a couple weeks ago, right? Like, really thinking about all the different ways the community can show up and them really being a platform for community to use the space. So I think it's really exciting.
Oh, I agree. I mean, there have definitely been spaces that I've walked into where, you can feel the yuckiness of performative work and you don't want to be there. And I can say that having worked on projects on the waterfront for the last 8 years, that there have been some uncomfortable conversations that have been had. And everybody leaned into it's not yuckiness, but it feels yucky at the time. And you might feel yucky afterwards. But instead, you're kind of in this, I don't know, I might even just call it like goo, because you're gonna go into it and it's gonna stick to you and you're gonna think about it. And then we come back and talk about it again. And, I think that those are the best ones though, right? Because we could have pulled back. We all could have been like, no, we're not gonna touch that. And instead, no, we want to have the uncomfortable conversations so that we can build community, right? Part of coming together is walking through those. It's easy when it's black and white. It's much harder when you're going into that gray zone and you have to make the hard decision. You have to have the hard conversation. And I've been so impressed with the committees that I've worked on in terms of yes, let's move forward with this in the uncomfortable. And that really solidified that group. I was actually just saying to somebody the other day, wait, I'm not working on these projects anymore after this long. Like, they aren't just like committee members with me. They're not just colleagues. They're friends. They're people I invite. They're people who've celebrated my kids' birthdays and things like that. So, you know, it's already there.
That's beautiful to hear. Thank y'all for these questions. I'm gonna try to get to some of these. One of the major questions is really about how will the waterfront park feel safe enough for families to be here? I know we've been touching on that surface, but I see the question is coming up again. I don't know if, John, you have some ideas about, we talk about safety, we talk about learning the lessons, right, from other, you know, waterfront parks that have tried to do such a thing. Between the two of you, what are we really doing here to make sure families feel safe?
Yeah, so you know, we have a multi-layered approach to public safety, but we want everyone to feel welcome. We say every single person is welcome in this park. Certain behaviors are not, and how to address those behaviors. So that's our approach to public safety, and it's really about getting the right individuals involved in every situation, right? So we have dedicated social worker for the waterfront that helps folks who might need connection to services. We do have, I think, the friendliest combination of ambassadors and city public safety folks between Friends Ambassadors and then the Seattle Center Emergency Services Unit, who really approach everything in terms of with heart, with compassion, whenever we see an incident that needs to be addressed. And that, I would say kudos to particularly the ESU team for that, because that's not been my experience in a lot of civic or city and government public safety teams, but they really want to find solutions that work for everyone. And so I think that's one way. And then the other one is just, once again, if you have activities that represent, that people can feel connected to, activations that people can feel connected to, they see themselves in the park, they see themselves represented in the park, that means you really are showing people that they really do belong. And that is such a fundamental portion of safety, right? There's the physical safety, and then there's, do I culturally belong here? Is this space really welcoming? Are they really creating a sense of welcome? One phrase that we always use frequently in our meetings is, right, you can welcome people to a space, or you can really build the space with community in mind, right? And people want to be in a place where they've been included from the beginning. They're not tolerated. They actually are invited, and right, and we really co-create spaces with them.
Yeah.
I would just add, I think the variety and frequency and richness of experiences are what's going to make this park safe. Experiences that draw lots of people, and it's about inviting everybody in, not kicking a few people out. And I think Friends is well on their way and has proven that model on Pier 62. And they just hired away from the Downtown Seattle Association, Michael Johnson, as their Director of Park Experience. So I am fully confident that Michael and Joy and Eldon are going to rock it on the waterfront.
Lastly,
Not bitter about it.
Sorry, John.
Lastly, someone asked, I love this question. What are you most excited for when we talk about this amazing grand opening? I'm going to start with you, John. We're going to go right down the line here.
I'm excited to watch how this space and the buildings that surround it transform over the next 5 years and 10 years. Because there's what is going to be opened in February, March of next year. And then there's all the other things that are going to happen, whether it's the programming and events and experiences, or how these buildings start to reorient themselves with new businesses, new artists, new experiences that didn't exist before. So this is not a place you come to and see once and feel like you've seen it all. And it's not about seeing, it's about experiencing to me. And I continue to use that. And I think that's how we ought to be framing this park and this space. It's about not to come see it, but to come do, to come experience. And it's going to continue to evolve just because you've seen it once or experienced it once. It isn't going to mean much, because 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 3 months from that visit, it's going to be much different.
Yeah, I'm super excited to just, once again, see the space evolve and really become integrated into the fabric of Seattle and the region, what locals, right, that sense of, once again, ownership and belonging that locals have, so that my dream is that it becomes a space where, hey, I have some free time. You know what? I'm just gonna go to the waterfront. Every time I go down there, I have an amazing experience. I might not even know what, the example I always use is like, I want it to be so ingrained in the community that you don't even look at our webpage to see what's happening. You just go because you know it's gonna be an amazing experience, an amazing place to be. So that's what I'm super excited about, to reach that goal and to get there.
I like that vision. Yeah.
I'm really excited about the connection from the waterfront up to Pike Place and Seattle Art Museum, and those to me feel really like retracing ancestral footprints when I'm there. Like, this is when I talked about the crossing over place, this place where you come to and you talk about like bringing up baskets full of wares to sell and trade up there, and I'm excited to walk that path with my kids, to see that, to go up to Pike Place Market, to go visit what's happening at the Seattle Art Museum, make that loop around Pioneer Square, and then you do that full circle. I'm really excited for that.
Oh, yeah. All the art, very on brand for me. The art, like Sean Peterson's welcome figures. I mean, you were seeing some of it in the slides. I still haven't gotten down to see Buster Simpson's work, but there was so much intentionality put into picking those artworks and working with those artists. And I think I can say that I'll be working with the Friends on a temporary art piece on the waterfront as well. So I'm very excited about that.
Yeah. I'll say, I want to answer this one too, because I'm excited about the awe of it all. You know, when you're around little kids and they're just like, oh my gosh, and they see something for the first time. And I think about how as adults, those experiences happen for us less and less, right? They get fewer and far between. And so I'm excited to be able to come down and have my awe experience, because seeing something in design on paper is definitely not the same as being in the space and experiencing it. So let's give it up for our panelists, y'all. Thank y'all so much.